and their loved ones. Bless the members of our armed forces, our veterans, and our first responders. Bless our country, our state, and beautiful Cass County. Amen.
Amen. Commissioner Barrera.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner Leyland.
Present.
Commissioner Lawrence.
Present.
Commissioner Locke. Here. Chair Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Howie.
Present.
Commissioner Barrera.
Present.
Commissioner Marquetti.
Here.
And Commissioner Lee.
Here.
All right. Welcome, everybody. I appreciate it. It's a beautiful day. I'm going to open the floor for public comments, but before I do, during public comments, don't expect anybody to have any interaction with you. Please don't point out any individual commissioner or person. I'm going to give you 3 minutes. Then after that 3 minutes is over, if you got more to say, I'll look to the board, and if they approve it, I'll give you more time. All right? Floor is now open for public comment.
Good evening. I'm Sarah Matthews. I am the Friend of the Court Director for the Cass County Friend of the Court, and I'm also the Circuit Probate Family Court Administrator. I just wanted to take a brief moment this evening to share some good news with all of you. The first is that the state will be paying for the court's JIS user fees starting October 1st of this year. I did let our Finance Director know that will save the county a little over $60,000, so I was very excited to get that news. The other good news is our FOC contract has been approved, as well as the prosecutors, for our funding moving forward. There's a little hiccup with the right language in EGRAMS that I may have to have some help getting that signed again, but in the long run, the state will pay for our security audit, which is another savings of $20,000 roughly for the county, so we're very excited about that. The other good news that I wanted to share is our Friend of the Court staff are actively working on some community events that they will be hosting monthly at the Cass District Library to reach out to families that have child support cases. Our hope is to be able to connect with those families, to work on getting payments on cases that have not received some in a while, so we can help the children and the families we serve better, but also to find out if there are needs that are not being met for those families. The big win for the county is if we're successful, children get more child support, and that's always the most important to us. The other big win for that is the more child support we collect on arrears cases, we have the chance for our incentives that the counties get as revenue to go up. So we are going to make that effort to see if we can increase that revenue for the county.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's good.
Good evening. My name is Lee Feldman. I'm an employee of Cass County. I do work for the court system, but I'm speaking on my behalf, and I just want to be clear, this is not the position of the court. First, I want to thank everybody who has been extremely supportive of employees in this county. I appreciate it. Many other people appreciate it as well. I fully support the proposal tonight to create a MERS committee. I believe this will give everyone the opportunity to thoroughly research and explore all options regarding our retirement plans. I also believe it's a good idea to examine other public and private pension plans who are in similar positions as we were, see how they dealt with that, and see how many different entities were able to grandfather in employees such as myself, who's coming up on 20 years of service with this county. I believe this will also give an opportunity to gather accurate data so you can make an informed decision. Finally, I ask that everyone put themselves in my shoes. I don't believe that was done when the initial decisions were made. Having a financial cut to my retirement plan was devastating, and it was gutted. I can't imagine anyone would be okay with that. So remember, this is real people such as myself who are bearing the consequences of a decision. And those consequences were taken on by a select few people and not everyone. So please remember that as you go forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
guests. I'm Jim Peterson, 235364 Forest Shores Drive, Village of Cassopolis. I'm a village trustee and a retired auto worker, retired international UAW rep. I watched the workshop meeting on YouTube, including the discussion about the Cass County retirement funds. There was a lot of disagreement about basic information and principles, the cost of the current system, how much it's going to cost to go to a new system, how many people we've lost, what kind of turnover. And such a wide disparity of basic facts and principles is troublesome to me as related to the strong opinions that were expressed at that meeting. One way to clear the air and get agreement is through collective bargaining. I would note that the union kept the DB plan, the non-union employees did not. Unionization brings a set of rules and principles whereby information is shared and agreed upon. The dialogue is mutually beneficial and agreements are legally binding on the parties. Unions have professional staff who can check the numbers and offer solutions to especially difficult and complex things like pensions, projections, and costs. A labor contract gives the parties time to concentrate on the task at hand, good governance. And then it's not unnecessary to keep talking on the sore subject. I would note at least one commissioner said, "I'm done talking about it, had enough." I would also note a correction to the Cass County, to an extent, to keep the names out of it, sorry. Erroneously cited the National Labor Relations Act in the discussion about non-union employees forming a union and bargaining collectively. The National Labor Relations Act doesn't cover public sector employees. Government employees are covered by state. In Michigan, it's the Public Employees Relations Act, PARA, and the Michigan Employee Relations Commission, MERC. My union, the United Auto Workers, has several units of supervisory and administrative people. Supervisory and administrative people in the public sector can form unions. So go ahead. And even my union, again, United Auto Workers represents assistant prosecutors, for example, court administrators, and that's an area where we've had apparently a lot of turnover. We've entered a period of labor shortages, a high quit rate, and vacant positions. Employees throughout America, especially skilled and professional employees, can quit a job and find another one that pays better. And without a DB pension, why not? If there's more money to offer out there, why should I stay? Let's be frank about it. Go after the money. I'm not earning a pension, so why would I stay in one job when I'm being recruited, getting signing bonuses to quit and move? One answer is a defined benefit pension that would keep people here. Nothing builds loyalty over time like a guaranteed defined benefit pension plan. Commissioners must look at the high cost of turnover and operating with so many vacant positions going unfilled and the loss of valuable employees when considering these human resource problems. Cass County employees can consider the value that unionization can bring: transparency, an agreed upon set of facts, and a legally binding agreement. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Anybody else?
Looking for a place to see the proceed meter, please come out to Dr. Lawless Park this Saturday. And we're hoping for good weather. We'll go all night if we can, and we'd love to see you out there. And then also the next day, come out to Russ Forest from 11 to 4 for Arts in the Park type program, and with music and a food truck and the beautiful scenery at Russ Forest Park. So a lot of positive things happening in your Cass County parks. Thank you.
Party at your place. Anybody else? All right, we're going to close the floor for public comments. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to move to delete from the consent agenda M-127-23. I would like to move that to new business, and under new business, it will be C.
All right. We need a second.
That's not a motion.
That's not a
No,
motion?
it's not a motion.
Okay. So that'll be, all right, we're good.
Yeah.
As long as our parliamentarian ain't jumping on me, I'm good. All right. What do we need for there, Mr. Parliamentarian?
So you would need to open it up so that way that, like, because we would
Approving
have to
the
make an
agenda.
amendment
Mhm.
to the agenda, so that would need to be made as an amendment. We would need to make an amendment to, and then you would have to have a second for that, and then you'd have to have discussion on the amendment, then you'd pass or fail the amendment, then you could pass or fail the agenda as amended.
All right.
So there would need to be an amendment made to the agenda.
And that's what you're doing.
Oh, yes, okay, so I move we amend the agenda
That's what I was waiting on.
by removing, excuse me, M-127 -23 to new business, and that would be C.
Under new business.
All support.
All right, we have a motion on the floor and support. Is there any discussion on the amendment?
I would just like to know why you want to move it to new business.
Well, I'm going to move it to new bit, to postpone it to the October 3rd regular meeting because of the budget. What we will be getting 3 budgets and we will have budget discussions. And the next regular meeting after the next week, it will be October 3rd.
Okay, I don't see why they can't run concurrent. You know, Jim and I will be on the committee. There's no reason why we can't go forward with this. It's not, you know, we could still have the budget talks and everything, but it would give the committee a chance to start exploring. You know, we're not going to make any decisions that, you know, we just need to start our exploration process.
Well, aren't you looking for, you'd be hiring somebody to look into the financial areas of it?
No, we would not be hiring anybody.
Oh, okay. I must have misunderstood that.
So just to clarify, the SMERS committee is just a fact-finding committee. It's not gonna cost the county any money whatsoever, and you already have people volunteering to be on the committee.
Yes.
And then there will be no decisions made by the committee without us making a decision as a whole board. It will just be a fact-finding mission where you go through information and clarify things.
Yes, so find out what happened,
correct.
where we're at and where we're going. And we would like to work in conjunction with Matt, because he is putting a new program together for the new hires, because apparently the current system is costing us money. So we do need to make some changes. So we'd like to work in conjunction with you so that we can all be on the same page, have transparency, and everybody will have all of the same information.
I just, again, so I'll say, in my opinion, I'm not opposed to the committee, but I don't want to get anybody's hopes up and I don't want to make any promises. This
Right,
is
this is-
simply just
Yep.
a fact-finding mission
Yep.
with some information.
Yes, sir.
This discussion is about the consent agenda, correct? I mean, I just.
Yeah.
This is on the amendment.
I guess I just wanted to know, the current board rules state that a vote shall not be required to remove a matter from the consent agenda. It's in the rules.
Also, we can just put it on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, just move it to
If any
new
commissioner wants to
business.
move an item from the consent agenda to the under new business.
You're right.
It happens.
Okay.
You're right.
And that's,
So we don't need a
that's
vote
under
on
that, yeah,
that.
so
So we
no.
just,
she
I
can
mean, the
just move
discussion
it.
is good and can
Yeah.
continue. I just,
so we've moved it and we can continue that discussion
that's the idea.
in, under new business.
That's
Is everybody good with that?
When did that change?
That's the way it
It's in the
is.
rules. It's-
We always had a vote to move things to the new business off of the consent agenda. We have done that before.
Yeah, we've done it before, but there, it is a rule.
Okay, so we were violating the law. Okay.
Yeah, not no more.
Last
Well, it's good to know.
Bylaws, not law.
Okay, bylaws.
Nobody's going to jail today.
Yeah.
I would like to clarify, my expertise is in Robert's Rules of Order. I do need to go through those.
Right. All right, so we need a vote to approve the agenda.
So it is just being moved then.
Yeah.
So she can just request, and where we're at now, she can just request to remove the amendment because it's not needed
Mhm.
for professionalism. She can just request to remove the amendment because it's not necessary. It'll just get removed. Then she can move that to new business
Yeah.
due to our bylaws, and then we just move to approve the agenda.
There it is.
Okay, so I agree to remove the amendment, and I would like to move M-127-23 to new business C.
Got it?
Okay.
And then do you move to approve the agenda? That's
Jim.
Commissioner Lawrence.
I move to approve the agenda.
All right,
Second.
there we go. There's a motion on the floor and a second. Any further discussion? All right. All right, recognitions, there are none, but we do have a presentation. I hope I don't muff it up, because I'm a little nervous. Just move this out of the way.
Where do you want me?
Right there's good, bro. As long as you can see us, you're good. All right, for everybody that wasn't here, a few months ago, I challenged the county to come up with a design for the other side of our challenge coin for the county. One side has a county seal, that's appropriate, but the other side, I wanted to open it up for the community to be involved for morale, community participation, and a bunch of other things, you know, and we opened up to everybody for what, about a month? I think it was about a month, maybe 2 months. And we had a bunch of submissions, and one that stuck out in my mind and stuck out to me was the old courthouse with 8 stars, the courthouse being a historical marker in our county, and that's the mark of Cass County. Plus, I got married there, and the 8 stars represent all 8 of our county commissioners. So you won, and I appreciate it. You made this world a better place, you know, especially Cass County. You know, we've got a lot of drama, and I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And
That's a big deal to me.
I have something for you, because I wanted to do something to honor you opening this contest for everyone in like residency, and I don't do this for everyone, just like the coin.
Right.
I painted you the courthouse.
Stop it.
And
wonderful.
you would like to show it off.
I would.
You also have a photo of the original photograph where the design came from.
Yeah. Look at that.
Oh, nice. Oh, very nice. Nice.
Look at that. That is awesome.
Nice.
I can't take it. I think we'll put it up here. That way it can be displayed.
Well, actually, I have one to donate to Matt for county.
Okay.
And this goes to you
Nice.
as well.
Oh,
Nice.
And it's,
Oh, my
so
goodness.
there's a card
Thank
in there
you.
too. But I have this for you, and that is the same photograph.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Nice. Thank you. Good.
You will get this displayed. Keep that photo.
That's a smile, not a grimace.
That,
I'll get some.
okay.
All right. Well, thank you.
so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, pass them on down so everybody can see them. That is awesome.
It sure is.
We got a shot of the in the hall. I just want to get a shot of this.
Matt is next.
Very nice.
You need anything else from us?
I'm just gonna wait till those pass around and get a shot of those. Go ahead. No rush.
Shot and then, yeah, that way we can get on with it.
Wow, look at these.
That is
Yes,
awesome.
they're beautiful.
Oh, man, look at the painting. Wow,
Yeah.
wow, that's fantastic.
What a nice job.
I tell you, she saves our butt so many times with graphics requests late and whatnot.
Oh, bless her heart.
She's an all-star in the middle.
Well, thank you for coming.
Yes.
Got it? All right. Thank you, sir.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, sir.
Guys.
Is that me? Thank you.
All right.
All right, Matt, you're up. Yes, sir.
So, just as a caveat here, everybody will get one of these. We are working, our printer, I think, has been working now for, about an hour to get everything printed, but we will have these momentarily, so hopefully we will have these down here before I finish up with my discussion. But in the meantime, we have this that we passed out, which is kind of the 20,000-foot view, if you will. So obviously, the larger sheet is going to go into a lot more detail, but we can reference that for now. So the goal here is to talk about the recommended budget for fiscal year '24. So obviously, this budget planning process was a little different than we've seen in prior years. In February, we had the motion to present a balanced budget option. So we talked about how that was going to change things a little bit. I know we discussed this at the workshop as well. And the idea was to look at essentially following a similar trajectory to we normally plan, but accelerating that a little bit earlier. So trying to have that pushed up by about a month, presenting that to the commissioners approximately 6 weeks or so earlier than normal, and allowing for more time to have discussion and working our way backwards from where we were at that point. So I've included a summary of all the meetings that we have had to this point. Starting in April, we met with Rose Street for our pre-renewal meeting regarding health insurance and our other associated benefits through Rose Street. Revenue estimates and projected staffing needs were due on May 5th and May 12th respectively. After that, through the remainder of May, we met with all of our departments and non-elected departments to get feedback on what we were projecting out for next year and into the following year. Non-wage expense estimates were submitted by May 26th. Had one last meeting there on the 30th with the prosecutor's office. Had our actual full renewal meeting with Rose Street on May 30th. Preliminary budget was presented to the board. That original $3.4 million fund balance allocation was presented on June 15th. We had a workshop on June 22nd where additional discussion was had. The goal being to have department heads, elected officials, go back and look at the budget and see if there were areas where we could find space to reduce or control some of those expenditures. Following that, we had additional meetings with many of our departments and elected officials on methods to do that. We finalized our health insurance options on July 14th. That also happened to be the day that those revised metrics were due. On July 20th at the Board of Commissioners Committee of the Whole meeting, we had that revised portion that was presented of $2.8 million. And then since then, we've had some additional discussions with offices and departments about how to move forward. So again, it's been a learning process, I think, even for me. We tried to follow a similar trajectory to what we had last year and work our way backwards. I think there are certainly things that I've taken from this where in the future we may approach things a little bit differently. I've learned a lot through this, but I think it was an insightful and informative process all along. What we have now is, as part of my contract as administrator, I'm required to present a recommended budget from the administrator. So you'll notice on the single sheet there, the blue column, or I guess the darker blue column there, is the recommended budget that we are presenting for fiscal year '24. And then alongside that, we did do additional work to determine what it would be to have a balanced option available that contemplated no use of fund balance. I'm going to focus primarily on the recommended budget, and in the larger sheets, when we get those down here, you'll see we've got our activity that shows the requested budget from departments and elected officials, the administrative recommended budget, and then the balanced budget option. And we have columns in there that show what differences there are, and then descriptions as to what those differences, I guess describing what those differences would be, or any notes regarding why adjustments were made. So, obviously, as we noted during the workshop in March, the impetus here is on trying to look at the fiscal sustainability of the county into the future. We've seen that over the last, I think it's been persistent for quite some time, but the fund balance allocation has continued to grow. And so we've been trying to work out through that, how can we look to control expenditures or conversely drive revenues in some way. And the one thing I guess I wanted to get across is that we are not, I don't think at that time and even now, we are not sounding emergency alarms that we are in any sort of, fiscal crisis. I think when you look at our fund balance and you look at some of the other, other funds that we have available here, that there are a lot of options. So it's not, we're not trying to say that if we don't make a decision right at this exact moment, that there's, disaster that's going to strike. But what we have been advocating consistently since that point is that we need to look at planning ahead for the future and trying to find some sort of a transitionary path to reduce expenditures where possible and try to look at other avenues to look at revenue increases where that may make sense as well. So I'll touch on some policy recommendations we have. Obviously with the recommended budget that I have presented to you, the fund balance allocation would be $1.28 million. As you compare that to last year, that was actually 1.8 million. So altogether, this would represent year over year a reduction in the estimated fund balance allocation of approximately 28.5%. And I'll get into some of the specifics of that later, but with respect to trying to look to the future and figure out ways to try to look at controlling costs that may not have immediate impacts, but look into the longer term future, we have some policy recommendations I have some policy recommendations I'd like to discuss. So, county vehicles is one. Over the past few years, we've seen fuel prices increasing sharply. With rising fuel costs, it becomes imperative to look at how county-owned vehicles are being utilized, the best path forward in reducing those costs. Costs with respect to county vehicles would include not only the fuel, but also increased wear and tear that would be present through increased mileage on vehicles, especially if they're driven to and from work. So what I would propose is that we complete a census to ascertain what vehicles the county is utilizing in terms of take-home vehicles being driven to and from work, have that reviewed, and then in coordination with potentially the policy committee, determine a county vehicle use policy. Explore what options are there, and are there any avenues where we can look to reduce some of those expenditures. Travel and training is another area where we focus pretty heavily or where I focus pretty heavily in the administrative recommended budget is certainly we acknowledge that continuing education and training are critically important in terms of capabilities, knowledge, and skill sets of county staff. But I do think we need to make a concerted effort on identifying opportunities to where we can reduce training costs. And that could be as simple as looking at grants and scholarships. A lot of programs out there have options to be able to offset at least a portion of costs, or in some cases, we may be able to get a full scholarship to attend something. So we need to be utilizing those wherever possible. And then looking at the overall training budgets, one thing we can look to do in some cases is it may be that in years past or we may decide that we want to send 4 or 5 people to a conference or a training or a seminar. When you start considering ways that we can control costs, maybe it makes more sense to designate somebody to go and then either prepare a report or in some other fashion, relay that information back to their coworkers and peers. Hey, here's what I've learned. So that information can still spread and somebody can still attend that training that's important, but reducing some of those numbers so we're not paying all of the travel and training costs for a contingent of folks to go to a training. Again, it may not be ideal for some folks, but at the same time, that is a big driver in terms of costs that we see that have been increasing, and one area where I think we can control that. Step hiring is another one. We talked about it today at the policy committee meeting, but we've had a resolution for the last 2 years that has allowed hiring up to across the full range of the pay scale. And I think when we start looking at how do we look at reining in potential expenditures, one of those things would be to look at those new hire pay rates. And so we have an existing wage and salaries policy that would set a maximum under the policy of a midpoint of 5. I think during COVID, and as you look at some of the employment environment after that, it did make a lot of sense to be able to have a greater range. I think we've seen over the last couple of years that I'm not going to say that there aren't still some lingering impacts, but I think the employment environment has changed somewhat, and we need to be mindful of where we are with the budget and looking at maybe that midpoint as the peak. I mean, there could be options if we needed to bring that to the board if there was a reason to hire above that, but I think we need to try to look as a county, to really look at new hires kind of starting along lower on the pay scale and having a progression they can achieve later on. Vacancy review is another one. I know we've had a lot of discussion on this over the last year and a half, 2 years. But along with that midpoint maximum for hiring, revisiting the vacancy review process would also be one. As positions become open, it becomes increasingly important for us to really take a look at those roles and find out, can those duties be moved, shared, or otherwise transferred to existing roles? Is that essential? Is that position still essential? Or can that, have we seen technology or things evolve in a way that might allow us to do that a little differently or think differently about it? Of course, obviously, we have to think about collective bargaining agreements and things along those lines. But I think a return to reviewing vacancies as they come up and having these conversations as a group and looking at positions, and I think maybe approaching it a little differently. Looking at whole departments and saying, let's look at the whole department. What's in there? What positions do we have? And maybe taking it less off of an island might be a helpful thing. Accounts payable is another area we'd like to see some changes over the next year. Postage costs continue to increase. When you consider the amount of disbursements the county makes and the check printing and mailing supplies that go into it, one area where there could be a significant savings that may not seem like it up front, but you start adding it all up, it becomes pretty imperative, is utilizing ACH where possible. The process in our system is fairly simple, and in a lot of ways, vendors have a benefit there. You get paid quicker than what you would otherwise get. You're not waiting in the mail for a check. It's a simpler process for us in terms of being able to process that payment, and it would obviously reduce our mailing and postage costs. So that's one other area we'd like to look at too. We touched on it a little bit earlier, but new hire benefits is another area. So we've had a lot of focus, especially through the MERS DBDC transition, on existing staff. And I know that it was a long process. I know there were a lot of feelings on both sides about how to approach that in the best way. Obviously, decisions were made, and I mean, we'll see what happens as we go to the future. But one of the things we think would be helpful to look at is how do we approach new hires? So we've heard from, in some cases, that retirement for some new hires may not be as much of a factor. Maybe wages are a bigger issue. So we can start to discuss, are there alternative solutions that might make sense? Obviously we went through the whole transition period was about taking care of our existing employees, but with new hires, they don't have that history with the county. There's something new there. So does it make sense to offer the same level of benefits, first and foremost? And then secondly, is there some alternative or different mix of benefits that might be more attractive to new hires in some way? So that's something I think that we're obviously planning to look at as we go forward, and I think will be a big driver into the budgets, not only for this upcoming year, but more likely into the future. The other factor that I would note is that as part of the MERS DC transition plan, that was focused entirely on non-union, non-elected employees. I think at the time it was stated that there was going to be some additional negotiations and work with elected officials on what a path forward may look like. I don't believe there's been a lot of headway made there. I believe the salary committee was going to potentially be the driver of that, leader of that. I think maybe that should be something that takes place over the next year to look at that, especially in advance of the next election. Projects and initiatives. So I know it looks like there is some reductions here, but I want to talk about some of the major things we're still going to accomplish over the next year with this budget. So the historic courthouse is a big one. At this time last year, we were nearing the completion of the interior demolition work and working towards a final development plan. In October of last year, funds were obligated to complete the project, and agreements for the final design and development were completed. And at that same time, we were working through the process of securing the congressionally directed spending appropriation from Senator Peters. I think you've probably heard from Commissioner Leyland and Commissioner Marchetti on this a couple of times, but it has not been a quick and easy process. It's been long and frustrating, but we do anticipate now with recent conversations with the USDA that we are in the final steps, and we are being told that funds should be obligated within the next 30 to 45 days, so construction should be starting ideally by the middle of September, we're hoping, at the latest. So the building should actually open for use early summer '24. Jail control system is another item I think we've talked about a couple of times, but I know we've had actually some incidents come up recently where that's been an issue. That's the original system that was installed during construction. In the decades since, the system has seen wear and tear, and obviously technology has advanced since then. Increasingly, the cost to maintain the existing system is growing, and the need to address the installation of upgrades is becoming critical to the operation and safety of the jail. With that in mind, an upgrade to the control system is forecasted to be completed in fiscal year '24. Along with the control system would be a duress system. Duress system is designed to alert the jail control officer in cases of a corrections officer being in trouble. Parts for the existing system are becoming unavailable, and it makes sense to coordinate the replacement of both systems at the same time. More than likely, there's going to be some interoperability there with them. And with that, when we are working, the sheriff has actually, I believe, submitted the paperwork. We've got to get it over to MMRA, but working to procure a grant to offset a portion of those costs for that system. Another grant-funded project that would be offset by about a third is a body scanner. Sheriff's office has been without a body scanner, I think it's around 5 years now, is that correct?
I'm sorry?
The body scanner, I think it's been about 5 years since we've had one, right?
Yeah. 4 years, yes.
4 years, okay. But with the recent in-custody deaths in Berrien County, as well as a drug overdose experience by one of our own arrestees recently, the need for the scanner has resulted in it becoming a top priority with the Sheriff's Department. So again, with this case, a RAP grant is being sought to help offset approximately 1/3 of the cost, and we would anticipate bringing forward a proposal to the board during fiscal year '24. And then the other major project I'd like to highlight would be our law and court security system. The current security system is also showing signs of its age. The system was originally installed during its construction. Much like the jail, technology has evolved since then, and there's a significant need to upgrade that existing system, as well as the installation of new cameras to help increase visibility in several areas of the building where there's issues with it now. A RAP grant is also being sought for that project as well. In addition to the major projects, I'd like to note a couple of initiatives that are going to be part of the budget as well. So we talked last year about the idea of embarking upon some interlocal agreements, namely facilities maintenance agreements and IT agreements. So during fiscal year '23, we've made significant strides in both of those areas. We did actually roll out a facilities maintenance agreement during last year. We've had a lot of great feedback. I think we've heard it at various times from the Road Commission, Medical Care, and the Council on Aging. Right now, we're looking at planning for a revised agreement. We're going back to the Board of Commissioners that'll make some revisions. I think that will be to the benefit of the county in terms of looking at revenues and helpful for our partners as well. And with that, the inclusion of Woodlands Behavioral Healthcare Network also. And then I think longer term, the idea behind this has always been to look at how we could expand this to include more partners. So obviously we've got refinements and things, and we've been growing as we've learned through this, but we're still in the early stages of that maturing, but I think there's a lot of promise for that in the future. IT services is another area. During the last year, we've worked with the Road Commission to facilitate some network upgrades, and we've been doing that with the medical care facility as well. Within the next 2 months, we anticipate having a formal IT services agreement with both of those entities that will provide ongoing maintenance or ongoing help desk service, network infrastructure support, those sorts of things that will bring additional revenue into the county as well. Broadband, obviously this year we're working on completing the parcel level mapping project that was approved last year. We'll see the bulk of that actually be completed this fall and be presented later this fall. We go through MDARD for a grant and Market Van Buren on that as well. I think this is going to be a huge project in terms of planning out what our future broadband initiatives would be and preparing for the upcoming BEAD grant that's coming that will provide additional funding for broadband as well. And the last thing I'll note would be a housing study. We've talked about this quite a bit, I think, over the last year, looking at several avenues on how we might approach that. Market Van Buren will actually be here next week, I think, to talk about one possible avenue. Housing stock across the state has been a major focus. We're in a regional partnership right now, group working through that. I know Treasurer Anderson, myself, and some of our local leaders are also involved in that. Our goal would be to look at achieving a housing study countywide to help identify opportunities for addressing housing shortages, increasing workforce housing, and continuing to explore our options for older adult housing that we've been planning for over the last year and a half as well too. Now, the final thing I want to touch on is the fund balance. So, again, we're showing in the recommended budget a $1.28 million offset to the fund balance for, as compared to $22.6 million in expenditures for the general fund. That equates to roughly a $520,000 reduction, or again, the 28.5% reduction in fund balance usage, which I think is a big factor. But I do want to note, much like we talked about in years before, that the county budgets for approximately 10 years have shown fund balance allocations on a consistent basis. But in most of the cases in the past, those final actual budgets have not resulted in much of that fund balance usage. I think there was maybe one instance in the last 10 where we saw that happen. Primary reason for that is that budgets are not fixed in the way that many of us tend to look at them. Budgets are best viewed as a moving window that's always changing. We've worked in the previous few years to try to reduce this variability though. So that's been part of our focus, has been how do we narrow those big gaps where we think, well, this is what we're anticipating for the fund balance, but then it ends up being, a complete opposite shift. So we've made progress in terms of how do we identify wages and salaries and things like that to help reduce those costs. But some of the factors that go into this, we just can't fully anticipate in advance, and we have to keep estimating them conservatively. So I want to touch on a few of those. So vacancies is a big one. Wages and salaries are always budgeted on an annualized basis as if the position is filled on day one. And part of that is because we don't know when that position might be filled. If somebody has a great candidate line up, it might be October 1st. If somebody has a position that stays open for a little bit longer, you may have a month or 2 or 3 where that position is open, and then we're not obviously using that money from the budget to cover those costs. If it's a new hire, somebody from outside the county, they're not going to be eligible for your health insurance benefits and retirement benefits for 90 days either. So that plays a big factor also. And then obviously as people leave, may leave positions throughout the year, if those positions become vacant, then however long that position may be vacant, you're also going to see reductions in the budget for those as well. Tax revenue increases, I wanted to touch on that too. So tax revenue increases for future years are very difficult to forecast. We don't know what homes are going to be built. We don't know exactly what businesses are going to be constructed. But I wanted to give a quick summary of what we've seen. So over the last 10 years, I looked up what our taxable value, our tax revenues were for 2013. It was $9.08 million. And then if you fast forward to fiscal year 24, we're looking at $12.69 million. So over the course of 10 years, we've seen growth of approximately $3.6 million. And I would note that this is not any change to the millage rate. This is the millage rate staying the same. This is really growth in property values. And new developments, new construction, things like that. We know that hopefully within the next year, we've got CHT is completing an expansion. Hedro is building a big facility. EQ United just recently had their facility open. So we're seeing that sort of economic development coming in. The housing study, I think, helps support that as well. If we can foster an environment where we're increasing houses, that's also going to drive that property value metric up as well too, the taxable value. And I think just year over year, from fiscal year 23 to fiscal year 24, tax revenue increases were approximately $800,000. And so that's something where I think, again, this kind of metric of looking to the future and planning ahead, I understand the desire to want to try to control, to get a handle on expenditures and be responsible with the budget. But I mean, there are these factors where we're going to see some of that growth that's going to happen in future years as well too. So that's going to help offset some of that. Marijuana tax revenues are another one. We keep budgeting conservatively for that. Last year is a good example. We budgeted 225 and got 311. So that's about an $80,000 difference. We budgeted 300,000 this year. I know there's been some facilities. I know that the industry is still growing. Where's that going to stop? We really don't know. It's been a couple of years. It's still maturing. Maybe it levels off at some point. Maybe we see larger increases here. It's difficult to forecast. Fiscal year 23 contained the final $315,000 allocation for the Long Courts building. So as of now, the Long Courts building debt is retired and the annual payments are not going to be required as we go forward. So I think that's a big factor. Public Improvement Fund. Traditionally, the county has allocated $500,000 annually to public improvement. For fiscal year '24, the funding had originally been obligated for the courthouse. Once the CDS grant is obligated, that funding is not going to be required for the courthouse. That's where the congressionally directed spending grant is going to come in. So as such, our existing balance in the public improvement fund is $846,899.59. That can be reappropriated to other projects. And so with this particular budget here, we've recommended I've recommended a transfer of $160,000. That would bring the fund balance in the public improvement fund to approximately $1 million before we proceed with any projects. I think that gives us a healthy fund balance to look at as we pursue projects into the future, and obviously any emergencies that could arise during the year as well. And another note is that even with that $160,000, that money is still available for use as long as it isn't spent on something. So it would show as part of that 1.28 million, but essentially that money's staying here. So you can take that out of that, that equation in terms of cash outflows. It's not a cash outflow in that regard. The budget stabilization fund, we have $594,174.67 available there. Looking back on years prior, when there were instances where the budget was, or there was fund balance allocations, the budget stabilization fund was utilized. We haven't done that a lot recently. So I am recommending that we would transfer into the general fund $400,000 from the budget stabilization fund. When you factor in interest and things like that in the next couple months, that would still leave $200,000 available in that stabilization fund into the future. And then ideally, as we start to get on a path where we're seeing a little bit more sustainability, that can be replenished into the future. Leveraging existing assets is another big one. We've talked about the housing development possibilities at medical care facility. Seeing those realized is obviously going to be a big impact on our taxable value as well. And then the annex building. Once we move from the annex into the courthouse, the annex building will become something where it'll be surplus property at that point. And there'll be a good discussion about what do we do with that? Is it something where you look to sell it? Is it something where you try to find a county use for it? That'll be something where we really will see a lot of focus on that coming up over the next, probably within the next 6 months, I'd imagine we'll start to have more conversations there. And then obviously grants. Applying for as many grants as possible, and utilizing those matching fund type programs wherever we can. So I guess in summary, the last thing I wanted to note is, and I guess I do appreciate, we've had fantastic conversations with all of our elected officials and department heads. I know that, Sarah was talking about this earlier, the GIS fees were covered by the state. We've had, one of the things I guess I was going to touch on was the delinquent tax revolving fund is going to pick up a position in the treasurer's office. I think I would applaud everybody for really taking a look at this and trying to figure out how we could approach this together in a way that helps achieve the goals that we've laid out before us. I know that was a lot.
It is.
Oh, ARPA, yes, I also wanted to note that. With the ARPA funding that we have determined and received feedback that the interest that's earned on ARPA funding is not subject to the requirements of ARPA spending.
That's
so,
good.
In this budget, I think $250,000 is actually contemplated in terms of transferring into the general fund from ARPA as well. So that'll help offset some costs too. And then the one thing I wanted to note before I take questions, I guess, is that in the administrator's recommended budget, we are not proposing any positions changing. That was a big focus. We've heard that as I've heard that as we've gone along, is that we wanted to find a path forward where we weren't touching positions. And that's exactly what we've done, what I've done here.
All right.
Two voluntarily given up that were included in
Yes,
that.
yes,
though.
I would know.
One in admin and another one split between two departments in the courts. That one was agreed by them not to fill, so those are separate and included in the admin that they were taken out. Just to clarify that.
All right, so go ahead.
With the balanced budget option, I wanted to highlight with that there was not a mechanism to be able to balance the budget to a net zero without positions. It was impossible. In the example we've given, it was approximately 11 positions that it took to be able to do that. And most of that was currently vacant positions. So, you know, it wasn't existing jobs, but I do want to note that that was the only way that we were able to get to a balanced option, was to look at positions.
All right, so you had said something about questions, but I reserved questions because we have that as a motion under new business. So instead of asking questions for your presentation, that'll give people's minds to work as we go through the rest of the agenda, and then open up questions when we have the motion and the second for a discussion on his presentation, right?
I don't think I'm on the agenda.
No? That's the budget amendment?
Budget amendment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Okay.
focus here was
Okay.
to offer an opportunity to present what I was recommending for the budget. The plan would be to look at bringing the resolution for the Budget Appropriations Act to the next committee of the whole, as well as the budget options that are presented. So essentially, there are three possible pathways. We have the final, if you look at the 20,000 foot view sheet, there's the 2.7 was the final allocation that we had from the preliminary budget work that we had done with all of our departments and elected officials. There's the middle option, which is the administrator's recommended budget, that's about 1.28. And then obviously the balanced option is the other choice. So I think what we would look to do is to have some direction about, okay, this is the budget we're selecting, and then have the resolution to support that as well.
All right, so there is, I seen budget on the other page and just
Yeah,
jumped
that's
at it.
some amendments, so not the
Yeah,
same thing.
I just jumped on it. So 4 questions. With that public improvement fund, you had said something, I don't know if you glossed over it or not, about that courthouse, when we get that money from the grant, that money that we had allocated for the courthouse that has been a contentious subject is gonna go back into the general fund, or is it gonna go back into?
Well, essentially, what was obligated back in October was money that was from the ARPA money,
Mhm.
as well as, it was approximately 1.4 million
Mhm.
from the public improvement fund. So what would happen in this case is the 1.4 million that would have been from the public improvement fund would not be utilized, and then that would be available for any major projects that would be, needed in
That's
other
great.
areas of the county.
I'm glad this is being recorded for that. Yeah, because that was a source of contention.
Yeah, again, and I would note with this, part of that was, we were proposing a slight reduction for that, so it'd be about $1 million that would be available.
Still
on the
good.
recommended budget, but I still think that gives a lot of flexibility.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I got a couple of things.
Please.
So, last week, I asked for an analysis to be conducted for the 3 different scenarios.
Mhm.
Is this what we're?
Yes, and we will have an electronic version for you as well, too.
Sure.
We knew that, I can tell you, we were working, I've been working on this, I think up until today.
All right.
Trying to make sure we were squared
Yeah.
away, but we knew that today was about presenting it, bringing it to you. Obviously, for next week, we'll have a more detailed discussion with that, I would assume. So we'll get, I know you wanted a spreadsheet, we will have that out to you, I believe we'll have that tonight.
Okay. So I do have a couple questions regarding your presentation. So,
Sure.
first off, with the step hiring, one of the other things that I know that was previously discussed was the 6% yearly wage increases that most employees get because 3% performance review, 3% cost of living. I don't see that being in the policy recommendations.
Well, I think that it would be, I guess the best way I can think of is that mechanism was included as part of the transition plan that was approved last year. So it was, I guess I could pull that up, but essentially for existing employees for a period, I think it was of 5 years, as it ramped up, there was a guaranteed amount of raises that would occur, or a certain percentage, as well as obviously step increases. Now, one thing we could look at potentially, I think step increases in the policy are not guaranteed. Step increases are predicated on positive performance evaluations. And so I think if you were gonna look at it from a policy standpoint, that's probably the one area where you may have some room to talk about, should we look at things differently? making sure that any step increases are associated with a positive performance review and ensuring that all departments' elected officials are completing those performance reviews as part of that step increase process.
Sure. All right, thank you for clarifying.
No problem.
Under the new hire elected official retirement benefits, you stated that the salary committee has yet to revisit this subject matter. Is this something that we're gonna have an upcoming agenda item on? Because I don't recall this being something that we were supposed to be looking at, as serving as a member
I
of that
think
committee.
part of the challenge likely was that, with the transition of board members, that probably, was something where I think in certain instances, sometimes things may not have been communicated clearly with that. But I think at the end of the day, I think with the transition plan, that was kind of how it was approached, was that I think there was even mention of it made when that was passed, that it was going to focus on just the non-union, non-elected employees, and that, for any changes that might be negotiated with elected officials as you look to the future, those would be handled separately. And then I think the request was made specifically that that should be between, the Board of Commissioners and the Salary Committee directly, and not, have the administrator directly in that conversation, because it's something where elected should be dealing with electeds in that regard.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that because I serve on the salary committee. A few more things. You made a mention under the tax revenue increases about Market Van Buren must lead to investment in new homes. Their involvement in our community right now has been with new businesses and things of that nature. I don't know how they've been playing a role with homes in the area.
Oops, I'm sorry. I guess I was implying, I think that in general, the focus should be on, with Market Van Buren, obviously the primary driver is going to be economic development. So
Yeah.
you're going to be looking at more kind of business attraction, retention, and expansion, those sorts of things. With respect to new homes, I think as a county, it is beneficial for us to be able to promote that. I think Market Van Buren would probably tell you that when you look at economic development, it's actually a component of that too.
Yeah,
That
it's
workforce
everything.
housing and those things are
Yeah.
also something that they really think about a lot. And I can tell you
Yes.
that, we'll hear about it more next week, but
Yeah.
they are taking an active role, I think, in Van Buren County and wanting to do the same
Yeah.
here in terms of looking at these housing studies. And obviously, they're not gonna be building homes, but I think the idea is to try to identify where opportunities are and then trying to connect those with developers and seeing how can we do that, and especially where there's gaps potentially and opportunities, how do we find ways to fill those gaps?
Okay, yeah, I just want to clarify that because I know some people have questions, particularly about Market Van Buren and their involvement with our community. Under the budget stabilization fund, just curious, when was the last time we dipped into that? Is that recent or has it been a while?
Been a while,
It's been a while. I think
Been a
it's
while.
probably
been
been
a while,
4 or 5 years, would be my guess.
yeah.
Okay,
I don't think there's been a lot of activity into it, as far as I know. I don't think there's really been much of that.
No, there
But
hasn't.
there really hasn't been any outflows from it either.
No.
And I guess the way I would approach it is that the whole idea behind it is to help stabilize the budget when you need it. And if we're talking about trying to look at ways to reduce our fund balance allocation, this is that time. If we're having money set aside to help do that, this would be the time to do that.
okay. And we know that in the near future, the cost for elections are going to increase. Has that been taken into consideration?
That's a good question. I believe we've tried to account for some of that, but I think there's still some unknowns that we don't know exactly.
Right.
I think that's a big question mark, and so I would note that I think probably as we get through that, if we do see that expenses are projected to be higher than what we might think, we would have to, potentially look at an amendment if that was required, but it's really difficult, I think. Maybe you feel different. I don't know that there's a really reliable way for us to necessarily predict it exactly.
Yeah, I know that at this point, it looks like the county is gonna run elections for all of the precincts. I'm looking for a location, so I don't know if we're gonna have to pay for that. And we're still waiting on budget from the state to know if and how much the state's gonna contribute. And we have to purchase all new hardware, all new software, and, yeah.
They gave us a rule and didn't tell us how to pay for it, that they made.
Well, voters voted for it.
Yeah.
Yep. Elections have
So
consequences.
that may be something we would see as an additional, cost if we, if it would be necessary.
Okay. And then just the last thing that I have, to pass a balanced budget, you said it would equate to approximately 11 positions. We're talking about 11 full-time positions, not part-time.
Yeah, I believe it was 11 full-time positions, and it would be across various departments and offices. I mean, I think our primary focus as we looked at that was to try to focus heavily on what positions were vacant already. With the thinking that, if we could focus more on those and not necessarily on existing roles, and that may be a little bit more palatable in some cases. I mean, it may not be ideal, but if you've been kind of making do without that role, maybe there's a way to work around that, to find an option where you can go forward without that.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Sam, but that, you reiterate that to say that we are not affecting any existing positions.
Not with the recommended budget.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Sam.
No, you're fine. I think that's all I have for now until I get an opportunity to dive deeper into this.
Sure.
I do need to.
Yeah, thanks. Floor is still open for questions. Yes, ma'am.
I don't actually have a question, but I do have my goodness, the work that went into this.
Thank you.
Thank you. You, Jennifer, I'm sure JR, Beth, Dacia, I'm sure all of you had a part in it, and my goodness, it's the best budget I've ever seen. It is, thank you so much for doing all of this so that we can understand and get a good grasp of everything that's going on. I appreciate it so much. But I have one thing that you didn't mention.
Okay.
I think our revenue sharing is coming up. Is that in here? Because according to what I've read, it's about 75,000 increase in revenue sharing.
I believe it accounted for the increase already.
Oh, you accounted for that,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, they did release those numbers, I believe, at the end of June.
Okay,
And so the budgets were updated
Okay.
then, with those numbers. So there's still, there's one from the state that they're not gonna share until October, I can't remember.
Okay.
I brought one of those checks. I'm on that
I
board.
have a budget right in front of me, I'd be able to tell you, but there's one number, so we're just kind of
Yeah.
estimating that one, but most of the numbers from Michigan have finally come out.
okay.
Just real quickly while I'm speaking, the spreadsheets that I passed out, thought it was really important to show, what departments were requesting, what the activity was, the differences between the department and the admin, as well as the differences between the admin and, the balance, and I highlighted all of those areas that had any changes. Just to be very transparent, that way nothing's missed, and I tried to put a very small explanation, so you had some type of idea of why I was making that change, or Matt was making that change. And so, just why those changes were made, basically, so there's something very little, if something doesn't make sense or you're unclear by that, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay.
And I have them in Excel if someone prefers that.
Yeah, please, because that's
I'm
poetry.
sure Commissioner.
Poetry, me too. Ryan, anything? RJ?
Just as a point of clarification, on the balanced budget document, those 11 positions are all non-mandated positions? I mean, because clearly they have to be. There are.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of them being mandated roles. no.
Any of the statutory ones that was talked about is what you're talking about?
Right.
Right.
A lot of times if there was a vacant in there, we were looking at that position. It doesn't mean that someone in that department can't change it, like, no, I need that one, maybe, switching it. I don't know those departments well enough, but we did try and go with looking at the vacant ones as well. And it is noted under the admin, how many positions in the dollar impact under each area. So you'll see exactly where a position's coming from in the different areas in there as well in that spreadsheet.
Jim? Anything?
Nope.
Joyce? All right, so for further clarification, This is just a presentation that's going to come to us at our committee of the whole to have more discussion after everybody gets this digested and everything. And then from there, vote to push it or not to the following business meeting to be done.
Well, and I guess what I would recommend is that we do have to have a public hearing on the budget before it's passed. So, and the public hearing does not necessarily have to, you don't have to pass the budget exactly at the same time as the public hearing. You could have revisions and things that come in after that, but I think it would make the most sense next week to look at making sure we schedule that public hearing to happen at the next business meeting.
Right after.
I mean, if whatever the board's pleasure may be, if you wanna have a special meeting to go over the budget, or if everybody feels comfortable at the next cow, moving, the recommended budget forward, either way, that would be fine.
Yeah.
We'll make it work, but I think setting that public hearing date will be important.
Because I'm sure that 8 phones and 8 computers are gonna be blown up if they're not already, with suggestions and comments and changes that maybe we haven't taken into consideration. Yeah, I get it. All right. If there's nothing else, we'll move on. All right. Commissioner Leyland, number 10.
Proposed consent agenda with the deletion of item I. I move the above listed items be voted on at one time by roll call vote and be considered as a consent agenda by the Board of Commissioners. I so move.
Second.
All right, so motion on the floor and support. Is there any more discussion? If not, roll call, please.
Commissioner Leyland,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawrence,
Yes.
Commissioner Locke,
Yes.
Chair Jones.
Yes.
Commissioner Barrera,
Yes.
Commissioner Marquetti,
Yes.
and Commissioner Lee.
Yes.
All right, that passes. County partners. I always forget one guy, Jake. Is Jake here? No? Any other county partners? All right, no. Elected officials, we have the sheriff and Monica. Do either of you?
Jeff.
And Jeff
Yeah,
Van
Jeff's
Bell.
hiding back there.
Yeah, I've got his name written down here. Yeah.
I'm good.
You good? Jeff, you good?
Good.
Monica? All right. No unfinished business? New business? I'll entertain a motion for Alpha.
I'll make the motion for resolution 129-23.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion on the floor and support. Is there any discussion? Other than we kind of need that, right, Parks guy?
Yes, please.
All right, if there's not, roll call, please.
Commissioner Lawrence,
Yes.
Commissioner Locke,
Yes.
Chair Jones.
Yes.
Commissioner Barrera,
Yes.
Commissioner Marquetti,
Yes.
Commissioner Lee,
Yes.
and Commissioner Leyland.
Yes.
All right, resolution passes. Bravo for M 130-23 for the FY 23 budget amendments.
Just a quick note, I
what's the board's
passed
pleasure?
out beforehand.
Yep.
We had one last minute addition to that, was for veteran burials. We've had a few that came in recently, and
Yeah.
we needed to adjust the budget to be able to accommodate that.
And I remember, because we just had one, our last one was 2 days ago. Yeah, and I talked to, because I'm on that board, and the last couple of years, we haven't had that many. But then all of a sudden, we're losing a lot of veterans, so I know that one
So,
for
yeah,
sure.
that would be a $2,000 increase
Yeah.
in that account, so it would be 13,000 total instead of the 11.
Well, there's good news. In 40-some years when I go, nobody has to pay for it. I'm going to Arlington or Fort Custer.
Oh, you are? Oh, well, remember that.
I'll make the motion to approve.
All right.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor and support. Is any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, don't have a closed session?
No,
We got
we got C.
Item C.
Oh, item C.
You got it.
Yep,
Okay.
yep, I forgot about
All
that.
right, M 12723, I move to postpone to the October 3rd regular meeting.
I support.
There's a motion on the floor and support. Is there any discussion on that?
Yeah, I have just a question.
So with you guys wanting to spearhead this committee, I'm just curious, who's gonna be taking the brunt of the work? I mean, I know you said you wanted to include Administrator Newton, but at this time, we are looking at the budget, and it seems like it's taking up a lot of his time, so I just wanna make sure we're not spreading.
Well,
people
yeah,
thin.
well, it'll be me and Commissioner Marquetti and Chair Jones.
You mean Howie?
You're helping?
Excuse me,
Howie.
Howie,
Howie.
Howie.
Yeah. Because we really can't, he's got enough right now, but,
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
can tell you,
No, I haven't,
while we work to keep getting everything ready to go with the budget, I mean.
nope, that's
there's
okay,
just a
we'll,
lot.
yeah. So that's the motion to postpone it. We had a motion and a support. Any further discussion?
My question would be, do you feel that you have time now that you could put forward? I mean, because you'd be one of those that serve, do you,
Well, I was the biggest proponent for that when it was passed, and, you know, I just want to refresh, and I want to clear the air. I'm not want to bring up any old bones or skeletons, you know, rub no salt in wounds, but there's still some unfinished business, you know, and I have to, because I've got to do it. I was the biggest voice, so I got to do it. I got
more
to.
like, are you good to take it on now?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm good. You know,
Okay.
I'm good. We're not gonna mess with Matt. You know, he's gotta get that budget. After that, then I'm gonna beat his door down, you know, and abuse him. But we gotta get the budget done, because if we don't do the budget, then all this is for nothing. And it's just muddying the waters for our naysayers, you know. But me, I'm personally prepared for it. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Do we know how long this is gonna take?
That's a good question.
that's a good question. We don't know yet because we haven't really set our goals yet, and we want to have our meeting so we can get our goals set and start collecting data.
Because it shouldn't take, I'd say we need it like at the cow, or at that first meeting, we need to set an end date so it doesn't drag on.
Okay.
You know, because we do have term limits. No, not term limits, but end of terms for voting cycles, and I might get voted out. You know, I don't want to have something left undone. So we'll talk about that. We'll make a point to make sure we get an end date to that, you know, and things are satisfied.
I think the only other thing I want to clarify was just like any other committee, to sit there, committees don't make decisions, but more or less just bring recommendations.
That's it.
to the
Yes,
board.
that's correct.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
correct.
nobody's making no decisions, nothing's getting voted on.
Committee members are also picked by the board and voted on by the board.
Yeah, by this board. Yeah. And ad hoc is me, isn't it? Yeah, I'm the person that appoints those positions. I don't have no issue, with that. All right, any more? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Nay,
I would be opposed.
I'd
So
be
we got
opposed.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We need a roll call. Let's do a roll call.
Okay.
Oh, to postpone it, yeah.
So
Yes,
if
we'll
you vote
postpone.
yes, you're voting to postpone the motion. If you're voting no, the motion to postpone fails. So I will start with Commissioner Lee.
No.
To not postpone it.
Commissioner
Yes.
Marquetti.
Yes.
To postpone it.
Commissioner
No.
Barrera.
Not-
Yes.
Commissioner Leyland. Chair Jones.
No.
Commissioner Vaughn.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
No.
So we got-
Okay, we have 4 no and 3 yes. So
All
the
right.
motion to postpone fails.
All right, we start immediately and get to work.
Okay.
Well, you have to pass.
We don't have a committee yet.
Don't have the committee yet. I get it. But that,
You haven't passed the motion.
I just,
No, we didn't.
we didn't?
Uh-uh.
Well, that was just, so now,
I would like to make a motion to amend the motion.
all right.
Any further defined benefits / defined contribution talks are held in public meetings so the public can participate.
Oh, I forgot about that.
That's your amendment?
Yes,
I support the amendment.
yes.
Just we don't have the motion made. We just postponed we're gonna postpone it off to have that motion. So we need to have a motion, then amend it, right? Have we made that motion yet?
Nobody's made the original motion.
Okay, so we'll need the original motion, then to amend it.
That's up to you all.
Okay, so I move motion 127-23 to establish a MERS committee.
Support.
All right, motion and support. Now, is there any discussion?
I'd like to make a motion to amend the motion.
I'm sorry.
And so then, how does that, how
So
does
now
he do that?
now it's open for discussion. He can make a motion to
No.
amend it, and
Yeah.
then you specify what your amendment is.
So we need a support, we need a second for your motion.
No, he has to
amend.
make, he has to,
Yeah,
Have to
okay.
state it first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
My amendment as follows. Any further defined benefits / defined contribution discussions and talks happen in public meetings for the public to participate.
Including the committee?
Any and all
Any and all.
talks,
Got it.
not behind closed doors, in public meeting.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Any further defined benefit?
Defined contribution talks, committee meetings, anything are held in public meetings
Mm.
Meetings
for the public to participate.
are held publicly for public.
second.
Yeah, that's good.
Seconded.
Yeah.
Participate.
Best.
Thank you.
All right. I'm pausing on purpose. That's not
Appreciate it.
furious writing over there. All right, we have motion on the floor and support. Any more discussion?
Is that required by law?
All committees are,
Supposed to be public.
yeah.
Okay.
That's good. That's a good idea. That way everything is transparent and out in the open for everybody to see, and there's no closed door, side deal, shady drama. I'm all for it. All right, now, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That passes. I'm lost now. Now what?
Well, the amendment passes, now you're gonna open up the floor for discussion if the motion is amended.
There it is. I will open up the floor for that discussion as amended. We shouldn't have no more discussion. All right. Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You're opposed or there's?
Oh, no, I'm good.
All right, 'cause- all right, it's over. Now are we done? Yes.
So we voted on the committee, now I believe we need to have you establish it.
Establish it right now?
Yeah.
Well, as chair, I'm gonna establish it with Mary and Jim. You wanna be the chair of that committee, and me and Mary will be members.
Yeah, so it's gonna be an ad hoc committee?
Well, the ad hoc, you can't have the ad hocs because that's not required by law to
Be public,
be public.
yeah.
You already passed the motion and we agreed that it will be public, so that's not ad hoc.
Okay, so it's not ad hoc, then the entire board has to vote on the members of the committee.
Right,
I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
I
just trying
think
to
so.
play by the rules.
yeah, that's
Would you- Would
good.
you agree?
So that's probably got some bylaws play in it. As far as I know,
Mm-hmm.
we could have decided that with the committee setting, like as it was, but now it just falls to what the bylaws say. So if the bylaws say that he can just pick, the chair can just pick, then that's what it is. But if the bylaws say that as a committee we have to vote on them, then that's what it has to be. That's based on that.
Okay, so it's established, we can follow back up on it if we need to.
All right, because ain't nobody going to jail over no committee. Breaking rules. I don't look good in orange. All right.
Me neither.
What else do we have to do here? Going around the table, comments?
I have nothing.
I've talked enough. Sam?
Anybody else good?
There was just an announcement on that
Yeah.
roundabout situation, Gumwood, that's ahead of schedule, it's been great work, so
Yeah.
hats off to the men and women working on that crew. I know that traffic is very heavy around 12, especially this weekend with the US 12 sales. I just caution everybody who's listening to please be careful, be safe, and take your time when you're in that area.
Mhm. Thanks, Sam.
Well, we have the US 12 garage sale tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday. And I can't stress enough, what Sam said is because a good portion of US 12 and Ontra Township is under construction. So everybody, if you're gonna come to the garage sale, and I hope you do, please be careful.
I'm gonna start east of here.
Yeah.
Because I always go that every year. RJ?
So the fair was last week. I definitely was at that, and let's see if I can lighten the mood here. So they had the Blue Water micro wrestling. You know, you have to have that experience at least once, I thought. And you know, in the end, have any of you ever seen the dark side of a small person? Because I have, and I'm good to not do it again. But it was a good experience overall. So. Yeah, but I tried to be politically correct on that.
Box
first.
check.
Yep, that's check.
That's funny.
Jim?
This was brought up to me at my township board meeting, that at the planning commission meeting that was canceled, that these members that were supposed to be here, they weren't informed that that had been canceled, so they stood out here for a while trying to figure out where to go and what was going on.
Website.
So just to let everybody know that communication probably could be a little bit better with that.
We've had some discussions on that and are making changes now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I will pass that along.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Joyce? Anything?
I do have one quick thing.
Oh, I have one quick.
If anybody has any children that need to go through hunter safety or want to go through hunter safety, the Conservation Club of Dowagiac's hosting 2 separate classes coming up in the near future. Everything has to be registered for online through the state's website. But if you get on the Conservation Club's page, I tagged the link on their page because the website's fairly difficult to navigate and find it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Monica, when is the election in February? Have they told you yet?
February 24th is the presidential primary.
Okay.
It's a closed presidential primary, which means when you go to vote, you have to request which ballot you want.
Okay.
A Republican ballot, a Democratic ballot, or now that we have a county-wide proposal from the Transportation Authority.
Oh, that's
You
all
can
right.
get a nonpartisan ballot that will have no candidates, proposals only.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And you only can pick one.
One, you can only vote once. on one
Yeah,
ballot.
yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. And so, okay.
All right. Yeah, I'm good.
Move to adjourn.
A second.
All right. All in favor? We are adjourned.